I assumed 24 years of marriage meant something real. Then my wife warned she'd call the police if I tried to stop her from walking out of our anniversary dinner with another man. By morning, she had nothing left. Her job, her house, her reputation, and the niche she intended to steal from me were all gone. This is the story of how a man who waits patiently dismantles someone who confuses kindness with weakness. My name is Dyla Montgomery. I'm 52, and until 3 months ago I believed my marriage to Candace was solid. We'd spent 24 years together, built a good life in Denver, and I was raising my 16-year-old niece Chloe after my sister died in a car crash 2 years earlier. Candace was a senior partner at Hartwell & Associates, one of Colorado's top law firms. I ran a consulting business. Not flashy, but it covered our bills and more. The night everything changed began like any other anniversary dinner. I had booked a table at Lil Bernardine, the upscale French place downtown Candace always mentioned. She entered wearing that black dress I bought her at Christmas, her blonde hair pulled back in that way that used to make my heart race. But something was off. She barely made eye contact during the meal, constantly checking her phone like she was waiting for something more important than celebrating us. "Dylan," Candace said, placing her wine glass down with the same precise motion she used in court. Her tone was icy and distant. "I need to tell you something." I set my fork down, feeling the change in the air. "What's on your mind, honey?" "I'm leaving tonight. There's someone else, and I'm going to be with him." She said it like ordering dessert. Flat, matter of fact. "Don't try to follow me or cause a scene. If you do, I'll call the police and say you're threatening me." The words landed like a blow. 24 years of marriage, and she was threatening me with the cops for what? Caring about my wife? "Candace, what are you talking about? Can we talk about this like adults?" But she was already standing, smoothing her dress. "There's nothing to discuss. I've made my choice." I watched her head for the exit, her heels clicking on the marble. Near the bar, a man in a navy suit rose and followed her out. Tall, lean, probably in his 30s, wearing that smug expression young men get when they think they've won. He didn't even look my way. I sat for another 20 minutes, finishing my meal in silence. The waiter kept shooting me pitying looks, but I wasn't going to let anyone see me fall apart in public. I paid the bill, left a respectable tip, and drove home to an empty house. That's when I opened my laptop and accessed the folder I'd prayed I'd never have to touch. The one labeled insurance policy that I'd been quietly assembling for 3 years. Because, you see, I knew about Candace's affairs long before that night. I just hadn't expected her to be brazen enough to threaten me with the police to cover her tracks. Time to remind her what preparation looks like. The insurance policy folder had been my secret for 3 years, hidden among business documents and tax files. It held everything a man needs when his life begins to unravel. I'd begun gathering proof the first time I noticed Candace changing. The late nights, the mysterious phone calls, the sudden obsession with girls' weekends that never included any actual female friends. I opened the main directory and scrolled through the subfolders. Financial records, communication logs, location data, and medical paperwork. Each file revealed a piece of the story Candace thought she'd kept hidden. The communication logs were especially incriminating. I had hired a private investigator, Tommy Briggs, ex-military, discreet, relentless. 3 months of surveillance produced more than I expected. Screenshots of text messages between Candace and at least 4 different men over 2 years. Hotel receipts charged to our joint card disguised as client meetings. Photos of her entering and leaving the Marriott downtown with the same man I'd seen that night, D.N.E. Mitchell, a divorced real estate broker who preyed on married women. But the medical documents are what made my blood boil. Last month I found out Candace had been charging cosmetic procedures to our health insurance. Botox, fillers, even a breast enhancement consultation, without telling me. When I confronted her about the claims, she said they were preventive treatments for the stress of her job. Now I knew the actual reason she wanted to look younger. The most recent folder held audio recordings from our home. I had installed a discreet recording system 6 months earlier when Candace began inviting work colleagues over for evening meetings that never involved any real work. The conversations I captured would make a sailor blush, but they'd also stand up in any Colorado divorce court. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Chloe. "Uncle Dylan. Aunt Candace texted me saying she won't be home tonight. Is everything okay?" I typed back quickly. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. She had a work emergency. Go to bed." You have school tomorrow. But everything wasn't fine. My 16-year-old niece didn't deserve to be dragged into this. Chloe had already lost her parents. She didn't need to lose her stability too. That's when I made the choice that changed everything. I opened contacts and scrolled to Elena Vasquez, Candace's former best friend from law school. They'd split 2 years ago over something Candace refused to discuss. I'd always suspected there was more. Elena, this is Dylan Montgomery, Candace's husband, I said when she answered. I know it's late, but I need to ask you something important about my wife. There was a long pause. Dylan, I was wondering when you'd finally call. How much do you know about what Candace has been doing? Enough to know our marriage is over. But I need to know what happened between you two. Elena's voice went cold. She slept with my ex-husband while we were still married. It cost me my marriage and my friendship. I've been waiting 3 years for someone to finally see through her act. Elena, I think it's time we had a conversation. Elena Vasquez showed up at my house at 7 o'clock in the morning carrying a briefcase and the kind of determined expression I'd seen on Candace before she dismantled opposing counsel in court. But this time that laser focus was aimed at my wife. Dylan, I've been waiting 3 years for this conversation, Elena said as she sat in my kitchen chair. Candace didn't just sleep with my ex-husband. She set the whole thing up, seduced him at her anniversary party, then convinced him to leave me for her so-called friend from yoga. I poured 2 coffees, my hands steadier than they had been in months. Why didn't you tell me then? Would you have believed me? You were completely under her spell. Besides, Candace threatened to destroy my law practice if I said anything. She had connections, influence. I was just starting out. Elena opened her briefcase, and I kept records of everything. She spread photos, printed texts, and financial papers across my kitchen table. The evidence sketched a pattern of systematic manipulation far beyond mere adultery. Candace had been playing this game for years, targeting marriages and wrecking families for her own amusement. There's something else you need to know, Elena said. Your niece Chloe called me last night after you went to sleep. She's been recording Candace's phone conversations. My blood ran cold. What do you mean recording? Chloe's been suspicious about her aunt. She installed a voice recorder app on her phone and captured several conversations between Candace and her boyfriend Dylan. They've been talking about taking Chloe away from you after the divorce. The protective instincts that had kept me going since my sister's death kicked in. No one was taking my niece. Chloe was my responsibility, my family, and I would die before letting Candace use her as a pawn in her twisted games. Where is she now? I asked. Cool. But she wants to meet us after classes. She has something important to show you. I spent the rest of the morning going through Elena's evidence and cross-checking it with my own files. The pattern was obvious. Candace Pierce Montgomery was a predator who used legal skill and social clout to manipulate people's lives. But predators slip up when they get cocky. And my wife had just made the biggest mistake of her life. At 3:30, Chloe walked through the front door with a purposeful stride that reminded me of her mother. My sister had been a fighter too. Uncle Dylan, I know what Aunt Candace has been doing, she said, pulling out her phone. And I know how to stop her. At 2:15 in the morning, my security system chimed with a motion alert. I had upgraded our system 6 months earlier. Cameras with night vision and infrared sensors that could spot a mouse on the driveway. What I saw on the monitor made me smile for the first time in days. D.N.E. Mitchell stood at my front gate, fumbling with the keypad like a kid sneaking into his parents' house. He still wore the navy suit from the restaurant, but now it looked rumpled and messy, his hair sticking up and back as he kept glancing around like he expected someone to catch him. I grabbed my laptop and sat in the leather chair in my study with a clear view of the security monitors. This was better than cable. D.N.E. tried the gate code 3 times before giving up and pulling out his phone, probably texting Candace, wondering why her husband's house wasn't rolling out a red carpet for her boyfriend. What he didn't know was I changed all the access codes right after dinner, and Candace's phone was sitting dead in a Marriott drawer downtown. The infrared camera caught every detail of his growing frustration. He leaned on the gate, ran his hands through his hair, and looked straight into the camera with that entitled, confused expression rich boys wear when the world doesn't bend for them. After 20 minutes of standing around like a lost puppy, D.N.E. finally gave up and walked back to his BMW, but not before the cameras recorded his license plate, his face from multiple angles, and timestamps proving his attempted trespass. I saved the footage to 3 different drives and uploaded copies to a secure cloud only I could access. Tomorrow that video would be Exhibit A in my divorce. My phone buzzed with a text from Elena. Chloe's recordings are incredible. Candace has been planning to take half your assets and full custody of your niece. She wants to move to California with a boyfriend. I typed back, not going to happen. I've got something even better. California. So that was Candace's endgame, to take my money, steal my niece, and start a new life with her boy toy 3 states away from anyone who knew the truth. She'd likely already looked into schools for Chloe, picked a house, maybe even shopped for wedding dresses. But Candace had made one fatal miscalculation. She underestimated the man she'd been married to for 24 years. I wasn't the passive, trusting husband she assumed she could manipulate and abandon. I was a strategist who'd been preparing for this moment since the first time I caught her lying about working late. I opened my secure email and messaged my attorney. James, we need to meet first thing tomorrow morning. I'm ready to file for divorce, and I have everything we need to bury her in court. Then I went upstairs to check on Chloe. My niece was sleeping peacefully in her room among photos of her parents and the life we'd built over the past 2 years. Whatever happened between Candace and me, this kid would be protected. That wasn't just a promise. It was a guarantee. Candace stumbled up our driveway at 6:30 in the morning, looking like someone who'd spent the night learning hard lessons about consequences. Her black dress was wrinkled, her makeup smeared into raccoon eyes, and she carried her heels in one hand while fumbling for keys with the other. I watched from my bedroom window as she moved toward the front door, walking with the unsteady gait of someone whose world had shifted overnight. The motion sensor lit the porch with bright LEDs that highlighted every detail of her disheveled state for the security cameras. She jammed her key into the lock and turned. Nothing. She tried again, harder, frustration building with each failed attempt. That's when the intercom I'd installed last month crackled to life. This property is no longer accessible to you, the automated message announced in a calm, professional voice. Please check your email for legal documentation. Candace stepped back like she'd been slapped. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and opened her email app. I watched her face change as she read the subject line. Emergency divorce filing effective immediately. The documents were detailed. Temporary restraining order filed at 5:30 this morning. Freeze on all joint accounts. Emergency custody petition for Chloe citing parental unfitness. Asset protection orders for the house, cars, and business accounts. But the real shock came when she opened the attachments. Video of D&E at her gate, audio recordings of her phone calls with multiple men, financial records showing her unauthorized use of our accounts for personal entertainment. Candace began pounding on the door, then moved to the windows. Her composed lawyer act completely collapsed. "Dylan," she screamed, "you can't do this to me. This is my house too." But I wasn't home to hear her meltdown. I was across town in my attorney's office, signing the final papers that would make sure she never returned. James, how long before she realizes the full scope of what's happening? I asked my lawyer. Based on our timeline, she should be hearing from her office within 2 hours. The anonymous tip about her relationships with clients went out this morning. My phone started buzzing with the first of many frantic calls for my soon-to-be ex-wife. I let it go to voicemail the same way she let our marriage go to waste. "Dylan, we need to talk." Her voice came through my voicemail, no longer cold and in control, but pleading and frantic. "Please answer your phone. We can work this out." 24 years of marriage, and now she wanted to fix it. Too little, too late. I turned my phone back on exactly 24 hours and 15 minutes after Candace walked out of that restaurant. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. 24 years of marriage reduced to 24 hours of silence before the storm. The screen flooded with alerts. Missed calls 89. Voicemails 34. Text messages 156. My phone was blowing up non-stop, just like Candace said it would when she discovered what I'd done in response to her betrayal. Candace had called 43 times. Her sister Jennifer called 18 times. My brother Mark, who always thought I was too good for her, called 12 times. Unknown numbers made up the rest. Probably Candace using borrowed phones once she realized I wasn't answering her direct calls. I scrolled through the voicemails like a man reading his own obituary. Message 1: Dylan, what the hell do you think you're doing? Call me back immediately. Message 8: please. We need to talk about Chloe. She doesn't deserve to be in the middle of this. Message 15. Sobbing. Incoherent pleading. Message 22. My lawyer says, you can't legally keep me out of my own house. This is harassment, Dylan. Message 28. Elena's voice. Calm and supportive. Dylan. It's Elena. Candace showed up at my office demanding I help her. I told her exactly what I thought about her situation. Call me when you're ready. Message 31. Chloe's voice strong and clear. Uncle Dylan, I'm at school, but I heard what happened. I'm proud of you for standing up to her. I recorded another conversation last night that you need to hear. The final message was from a number I didn't recognize. This is DNE Mitchell. I don't know what your problem is, man, but Candace doesn't deserve this treatment. You're being cruel and vindictive. I saved every voicemail to a secure folder, then called my attorney, James. She's starting to panic. How are things progressing on your end? Better than expected. Dylan. The firm placed her on administrative leave an hour ago. The evidence we provided about her relationships with clients was overwhelming. She's also been terminated from 2 charity boards after anonymous tips about her character came to light. I'd spent months building relationships with people in Candace's professional network, not to gossip or spread rumors, but to ensure that when the truth finally came out, it would be heard by the right people. What about the house? Title transfer completed this morning. You're now the sole owner of the property. She has no legal claim to enter or remain on the premises. My phone rang again. Candace's number. This time, I answered. Hello. Candace. Dylan, thank God. We need to talk face to face like adults. We are talking, Candace. This is me being an adult taking responsibility for my family's future. I made a mistake, but we can fix this. 24 years means something, doesn't it? Yes, it does. It means I wasted 24 years on someone who never respected our marriage. I hung up and blocked her number. The war was just beginning. I walked into First National Bank at 9 sharp, dressed in my best suit and carrying a briefcase full of documents that would reshape my financial future. Margaret Stevens, our longtime account manager, greeted me with the professional courtesy she reserved for clients who kept substantial balances. Mr. Montgomery, I understand we have some account restructuring to discuss, she said, leading me into her private office. Margaret, I need to execute the contingency plans we established 6 months ago. Everything we discussed about protecting assets in case of marital dissolution, she nodded, pulling up our accounts on her computer. The numbers were staggering, even to me. 24 years of careful saving, strategic investments, and business growth had created a portfolio worth just over $2 million. The joint checking and savings accounts have been frozen as of this morning per your instructions. Margaret explained, your personal accounts, which were restructured under the family trust last year, remain fully accessible to you. That restructuring had been my master stroke. When Candace signed those documents to consolidate our debt, she'd unknowingly transferred her ownership stake in our primary assets to a trust that named me as sole administrator. My lawyer had crafted the language so carefully that even another attorney might miss the implications on first reading. What about the house? Title transfer completed yesterday. You're now the sole owner. Mrs. Montgomery's name has been removed from all property records. The house had always been Candace's pride and joy. She'd spent countless hours redecorating, hosting dinner parties, showing off to her colleagues and friends. What she didn't realize was that her signatures on various refinancing documents over the years had gradually shifted ownership entirely to my name. Margaret, I need you to prepare cashier checks for specific amounts. I'm making some strategic charitable donations. This was the part that would really sting. I'd researched several organizations that supported betrayed spouses and children from broken homes. The Denver Family Recovery Foundation would receive $50,000 in Candace's name, specifically designated for their Healing from Infidelity program. Another $25,000 would go to the Colorado Children's Advocacy Center, again in her name, for their family stability initiatives. Sir, these are quite substantial donations. Are you certain about the attribution? Absolutely. I want Candace Montgomery's name associated with organizations that help people recover from the exact type of damage she's caused. My phone buzzed with yet another call from my soon-to-be ex-wife. I'll let it ring while Margaret prepare the paperwork. Mr. Montgomery, there's one more item we need to discuss. The car loan from Mrs. Montgomery's Lexus was tied to your business credit line. Since she's no longer employed, the insurance company has flagged the policy for review. Cancel the insurance and initiate repossession proceedings. The car was a company benefit that she's no longer entitled to receive. That $90,000 luxury hybrid would be gone by the end of the week. Just another reminder that actions have consequences, and Candace was about to learn that lesson the hard way. By the time I left the bank, Candace Montgomery had gone from wealthy attorney's wife to financially powerless defendant in less than 48 hours. The Zoom courtroom felt like a gladiator arena where reputations went to die. Judge Patricia Henning presided over the screen with the no-nonsense authority of someone who'd seen every variety of human selfishness pass through her virtual bench. Candace appeared in a small window on the left side of my laptop screen, flanked by her hastily hired attorney, David Brennan. She'd clearly spent what little accessible money she had left on professional damage control. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, and she wore a conservative navy blazer that screamed responsible professional woman. But I could see the desperation in her eyes. "Your Honor," Brennan began, "my client has been unlawfully excluded from her primary residence and denied access to marital assets without due process. We request immediate temporary restoration of property access and financial support pending full proceedings." Judge Henning's expression remained neutral as she reviewed the documentation on her screen. "Mr. Clark, please present your client's position." My attorney, Stephen Clark, had the bearing of a man who'd never lost a case he'd properly prepared for. "Your Honor, we submit extensive evidence demonstrating that Mrs. Montgomery forfeited any claim to marital assets through systematic adultery, fraud, and attempted theft of family resources. The evidence presentation was devastating. Screenshots of hotel reservations charged to our joint accounts. Audio recordings of Candace laughing about my alleged ignorance while planning her escape to California. Video footage of her boyfriend attempting to enter our property. Financial records showing unauthorized transfers and misuse of funds. But the piece that sealed her fate was Chloe's testimony. My 16-year-old niece appeared on screen with the composed dignity of someone far older than her years. "Your Honor, I recorded conversations between my aunt and her attorney where they discussed taking me away from my uncle and using my trust fund to pay her legal expenses." "Can you elaborate, Miss Sullivan?" Aunt Candace said I was collateral damage that she'd have to manage until she could access my inheritance. She called Uncle Dylan too stupid to fight back effectively. She planned to move me to California against my wishes and use my parents' money to start her new life. Judge Henning's expression hardened as she listened to the audio playback. Candace's voice filled the courtroom. "The kids' trust fund has enough to cover my legal fees and give Adrian and me a fresh start. Dylan won't fight for custody. He's too much of a pushover." The silence that followed was deafening. "Mrs. Montgomery," the judge said, her voice cold as winter morning, "based on the evidence presented, I find no basis for temporary restoration of access or support. Your request is denied. Furthermore, this court orders a full investigation into the allegations of attempted fraud regarding the minor child's trust fund." Candace's face went pale. "Your Honor, I can explain." "No explanation necessary, Mrs. Montgomery. These proceedings will continue in 30 days. Until then, the current restrictions remain in full effect." The screen went dark and Stephen looked at me with satisfaction. "Dylan, she just lost everything. But I wasn't celebrating yet. Cornered animals fight the hardest." And Candace Montgomery had just realized she was completely trapped. The envelope arrived at Candace's temporary apartment via certified mail, requiring her signature and ending any hope she might have harbored about salvaging her reputation. Inside, she found the comprehensive divorce settlement that would define the rest of her life. No alimony due to proven adultery and fraud. No claim to marital assets due to legal ownership transfers she'd unknowingly signed. No visitation rights with Chloe due to documented evidence of attempted financial exploitation of a minor. But the cruelest detail was the psychological evaluation report I'd commissioned from Dr. Patricia Henley, a respected family psychologist who'd reviewed all the evidence. Her professional assessment concluded that Candace exhibited narcissistic personality traits incompatible with stable family relationships or child welfare responsibilities. Subject demonstrates consistent patterns of manipulation, emotional exploitation, and disregard for family bonds. Dr. Henley had written her recorded statements about the minor child reveal a transactional view of relationships that prioritizes personal gain over child welfare. The report recommended supervised therapy and a minimum 2-year separation from Chloe to prevent further psychological damage to the teenager. Elena called me that evening with news that completed Candace's public humiliation. Dylan, the charity luncheon happened this afternoon when they announced Candace Montgomery as a major donor to the Healing from Infidelity program. The room went dead silent. Everyone knew about her situation. The wives of her former colleagues, the social circle she'd worked years to cultivate, the professional network she'd counted on for support. They'd all heard the recordings, seen the evidence, understood exactly what kind of person she really was. How did she handle it? I asked. She wasn't there, but 3 of her former clients showed up asking questions about their cases. Turns out she'd been distracted during several important depositions because she was texting her boyfriends. They're considering malpractice suits. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Dylan, this is Dane. Candace told me what you did to her. You're a vindictive bastard who can't handle losing his wife to a better man. I showed the message to Chloe, who was doing homework at the kitchen table. My niece looked up with the kind of mature wisdom that comes from watching adults behave badly. Uncle Dylan, do you think she'll ever understand why this happened? No. Sweetheart. People like your aunt never accept responsibility for their choices. They always find someone else to blame. Chloe nodded and returned to her homework. At 16, she'd learned more about character and consequences than many adults ever do. That night, I sat in my study reviewing the final documents. Candace Montgomery would receive nothing from our marriage except the clothes she'd taken and whatever money she could earn rebuilding her destroyed career. Everything else, the house, the investments, the business, the respect belonged to the man she'd underestimated. I raised my glass of bourbon in a quiet toast to the future where strong men protect their families and weak people face the consequences of their selfish choices. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of our Denver home, watching Chloe practice her valedictorian speech for high school graduation. The girl who'd once been caught between a failing marriage had become a confident young woman with early acceptance to Colorado State University and a full academic scholarship. Uncle Dylan, do you think Aunt Candace would try to contact me when I turn 18 next month? I looked up from the morning paper where a small item reported that Candace had been permanently disbarred after the malpractice investigation revealed a pattern of professional negligence spanning several years. She might try, Chloe, but you'll be an adult who can make her own decisions about toxic people. The doorbell rang, and I opened it to find Elena Vasquez holding a bottle of champagne and legal documents. She'd moved back to Denver after her law practice in Portland expanded enough to open a Colorado branch. Dylan, I have news. Candace's boyfriend, Dane Mitchell, was arrested yesterday for fraud. Turns out he's been running the same scam on multiple married women across 3 states. The FBI wants to interview you about his attempted access to your property. Elena had become more than just an ally in my fight against Candace. She'd become a trusted friend who understood the value of loyalty and honesty in relationships. What about Candace herself? Working as a paralegal in a strip mall legal clinic, living in a studio apartment, driving a 10-year-old Honda. Her new boyfriend left her when the money ran out. I felt no satisfaction or downfall, just relief that she could no longer hurt the people I cared about. Chloe had thrived in an environment free from manipulation and emotional exploitation. She'd grown into the kind of strong, principled young woman her parents would have been proud to see. That evening, as Chloe studied for her final exams, and Elena helped prepare dinner in our kitchen, I realized something important. I hadn't just survived Candace's betrayal. I'd used it to build a better life for the people who actually mattered. My phone sat silent on the counter. No desperate calls, no manipulative messages, no threats or bargaining, just peace. Later that night, I walked upstairs to check on Chloe. She was reading college preparation materials, planning a future that would take her far from the drama that had once threatened to destroy her stability. Good night, Uncle Dylan. Thanks for everything. Good night, sweetheart. Sweet dreams. I closed her door and walked to my bedroom where a framed photo of my sister reminded me why some battles are worth fighting. Strong men protect their families no matter the cost. And sometimes the best revenge is simply living well while weak people face the consequences of their own choices. 24 years of marriage had taught me to trust the wrong person. 6 months of divorce had taught me to value the right ones.